For the first time since arriving in England, Femi invited Sade to play Io with him. The smooth, blue-brown pebbles trickled through their fingers, swooping in and out of the rows of cups carved into the wooden board. Each tried to hide their excitement, and neither spoke of Papa. From Io, they shifted to cards, rummy and patience. But alone in the shadows of the night, Sade found herself adrift once again. She tossed in her bed, thinking about Papa, trying to shut out memories from their last terrible day at home. Yet as soon as she blanked those out, other awful pictures slunk in. Papa lying on a narrow metal bed in a cold, dark cell with only a tiny barred window for light. Someone in a white coat like Hawkman grasping Papa's hand, forcing his fingers onto an ink pad. Handcuffs snapped onto Papa's wrists. Sade tried to chase these pictures away by recalling Papa's voice on the telephone. "Thank God you are both safe." She had been too numb to capture the rest. Everything was jumbled in her brain. Papa speaking from inside a prison, yet his words escaping like a genie from a bottle. In the morning, Sade willed the hands on the clock to hurry as they waited for Mama Apia. Femi tried to cover up his nervousness, but Sade could tell he was wound up like a spring. When at last they were seated in Mama Apia's old beige Ford, with Femi in front and Sade behind, the car seemed painfully slow. It nudged its way through mile upon mile of crowded London streets. Even when they reached the highway, that too was choked with traffic. It was only after passing a large green sign with a white arrow pointing to Oxford that Sade felt they were finally taking off. She tapped Femi's shoulder. "Do you remember the tortoise, when he flew to the feast in the sky?" Mama Apia chuckled. "I know that story too. I couldn't make this old car fly even if I wanted to." Sade edged back into her seat as the car rattled and shook along the road that snaked between fields of brown earth and grey-green hills. The scenery outside was like a film, or a fairy story. Nothing would be real until they saw Papa. But how strange that his prison was near Oxford. Two enormous books stand on Papa's desk like fat generals in royal blue uniform, each with a red and green stripe on his cap. They are wedged upright between a pair of gleaming ebony Oko and Iowo heads that are twice as large and stout as the couple on Sade's own desk. The two volumes of the Shorter Oxford English Dictionary hold place of honour in Papa's study. Mama says that each is almost as heavy as a newborn baby. Treat them with care. Open them only on the table itself, so their spines do not break. Sade loves the row of little fingernail half-moons slanting down along the right-hand side, each with its own gold letter of the alphabet. Papa tries to leave a small space clear of papers so the dictionary can be consulted without him being troubled. But sometimes, if he is working at his desk, he stops to ask what word she is seeking. Sade much prefers to consult the Oxford, as they call it, rather than her school dictionary. The name Heathlands did not sound like a prison, but when Sade and Femi clambered out into the country lane where Mama Apia parked, they stared up at a 6-metre-high wire fence topped with great loops of barbed wire. Behind the thick poles and the wire, a cluster of large brown brick buildings loomed above a tarmac yard. Every window was barred. Was Papa behind one of them, watching, waiting? Impatiently, they both searched the rows of windows, but the bars were too dense and the glass too dark to see anyone or anything. As they approached a metal gate in the fence, there was a curious buzzing. Slowly the gate swung open, as if pulled by some invisible force. A small square office overlooked the gate, and, through the large glass plate window, Sade glimpsed three figures in black and white uniforms. Once again, they were entering the territory of the eyes. Inside at the desk ahead of them, a visitor was arguing. "It's only fruit for my friend. You can check it." "We're sorry, sir, but it's not allowed. Your friend gets fruit at mealtimes." "Not like this. I bought pineapple and mangoes especially. Check them." The eyes continued to refuse. They were polite, but the answer remained no. Finally, when the man agreed to leave behind his bag of fruit, it was their turn at the desk. The eyes and the fingers inspected the contents of Mama Appiah's bag. Stepping through the metal detector doorframe, Sade surveyed the stretch of open tarmac leading to the next high wire barrier. Looking upwards, she spotted the cameras. They followed a guard through two further gates before entering a building with a heavily locked door. Mama Appiah shepherded the children into a large room lined with red chairs. People sat talking quietly in small groups and pairs. Anxiously, Sade and Femi scanned them. Papa wasn't there. "They'll send for your daddy now," Mama Appiah reassured. "He'll be here very soon." It could have been a waiting room anywhere, with a machine for canned drinks in one corner. Mama Appiah had explained that Heathlands was a prison for people who wanted to live in England, but who came without permission. "It doesn't look like a prison," Femi muttered to Sade. "See there, in the corner," she whispered. There were cameras by the ceiling. The eyes were everywhere. They hovered close to the glass door. Through it, they could see and watch the entrance desk, where two officers sat chatting. The lady officer had smiled at the children when they entered, but neither Sade nor Femi had responded. How could they smile at Papa's jailers? Papa was locked up behind all the wire and bars just like he was a criminal. Sade kept her eyes trained on the door behind the desk. Every time a figure appeared in its distant shadows, her fingernails dug deeper into her palms. Mama Appiah suggested that the children sit down, but both shook their heads, choosing to stay rooted near the door. At last, a familiar figure, but looking strangely different, came striding past the desk without even glancing at it. Towards the glass door, towards them. Papa. It was Papa, wasn't it? Behind a short beard and moustache. The face broke into a well-known smile. He pushed the glass aside and, in a great arc, his arms swept up the children. Sade felt all stiffness give way as Papa pressed them to his chest. With Papa's breath in her hair, the tears spurted hotly down her cheeks. They soaked into her father's shirt as she heard his choking voice repeat their names. A little later, they sat on the red visitor chairs, the children on each side of Papa. There was a brief, awkward silence as they struggled to find the words to begin. Papa, why did you grow a beard and a moustache? Femi wrinkled his nose. Sade wondered how her brother had managed to remain dry-eyed. It makes you different, Papa. I almost thought it wasn't you, said Sade. You look like Uncle Tunde. It's... Femi broke off. You've noticed my new grey hairs, have you? Papa smiled. Well, it was your uncle's idea, to change my looks as much as possible. Their father looked thinner, especially in his narrow white shirt with buttons and not one of his usual free-flowing agbadas. But Sade didn't want to say it. Papa wanted them to tell him everything. When he and Uncle Tunde had found they could not contact Uncle Deli, they had become very worried. The agent assured them that Mrs. Bankole would be taking good care of the children, but said he had no way of contacting her. They suspected that he wasn't telling the truth, yet there was nothing they could do except wait for the passport to be arranged. We tried to ring you, Papa, said Sade, but the line was dead. The police were looking for me. They cut off the phone. But now I want to hear all about you two. Until I met this good lady. Papa's low voice almost sang the words, good lady, as he smiled at Mama Apia. I was almost losing my mind. There was so much to tell Papa. Too much. Desertion at Victoria Station. The shock of Uncle Deli being missing. Darth Vader of the alley grabbing their bag. Video man accusing them and calling the police. Mrs. Graham taking them in. Kevin complaining. The awful asylum screening unit. But also Iwo Jenny, Mama Apia, Mr. Nathan, and of course, Aunt Gracie and Uncle Roy, who were trying so hard to make them feel at home. Papa nodded with satisfaction when he heard that they were both in school. However, Sade mentioned nothing about Marcia nor about Mariam. After the earlier hugging and excitement, Femi was quieter. He said little about Greenslade's primary, even though he was looking up at Papa. Sade thought her brother's eyes seemed lost inside him. In the end, the conversation returned to how lucky they were to have found each other again. Sade began to explain to Papa why she had given a false surname, and suddenly, without warning, she was crying again. Both Papa and Mama Apia comforted her. All was not lost yet, they said. Mr. Nathan would take on Papa's case. He would explain to the immigration people that Sade and Femi were actually Papa's children. He would ask them to release Papa to be with them, at least while they considered his case. The afternoon slipped away. It came as a shock when the guard announced that all visitors had to leave. Sade hadn't yet asked anything about Mama. She hadn't yet found the words to ask where and how Mama had been buried. Nor had she brought herself to ask about Grandma. She wanted to know, needed to know, but they were being told to go away. Femi stalked across to the door. He looked so small, tight and lonely, as if shutting himself in once again. Sade clung to Papa. Could they not stay here with him? I'm afraid they won't allow it. She glimpsed a slight quivering around his mouth before the muscles tightened. Fiercely, she wound her arms around him. Don't worry, children. This won't be for long. We shall talk on the phone. We shall be together very, very soon. We must be patient. Papa softly repeated his reassurances, but the more she heard, the title she held on. Papa talking about being patient didn't sound like him at all. Mama Appiah's hand lightly touched her shoulder. All visitors must leave right away. The guard held open the glass door. Sade wanted to shout, We're not visitors! This is our father! She shut her mind to all the words around her until gradually she felt Papa's strong fingers very gently prizing her away. The same fingers that a little while ago had been pressing her close. It was too much to bear. She let go and ran headlong towards the glass door. Her sight blurred with tears, her head throbbing. Odabo, Sade? Odabo, Femi? Goodbye, Mrs. Appiah. Thank you. Papa's stifled voice followed as if from a great distance. Unable to bear seeing Papa left by himself, Sade did not turn around.